I don't know why voting is so complicated, but it is. Hi guys, it's Kim. Welcome back to Kim Tries. If my voice sounds weird or my teeth look weird, I just got Invisalign. You obviously don't care about that. You want to care about voting. And I want to essentially simplify the ability for you to register to vote and also your understanding of how to vote. I'm going to be honest, this video is going to be very general as voting depends a lot on the current state that you live in. So there are some federal guidelines, there are some overarching kind of themes that come to voting in the registration process, but for the most part, it's going to be very dependent on where you live. So I've broken down voting into how to register to vote and everything that comes with that, and then actually submitting your ballot to vote, okay? So registering to vote, you can essentially do that two ways. You can do it online or you can do it by mail. And online, there's only 39 states plus DC that allows you to do this, and it'll each bring you to an individual state portal. And I'll put some examples somewhere on the screen that'll kind of show you different states portals on how you register to actually vote in your state. Overall though, all states can register by mail, and I'll put a link on the screen and in the description to the form that you will fill out. And you can either fill out this form online on screen at a PDF, or you can print it out, write on it, sign it, important, okay? You're gonna print out, if you fill it out online anyway, you're gonna print it out, sign it, important, and then you're gonna mail it in to where your state determines you need to mail it into. Both of those methods are valid, okay? And then the next thing you have to do before every single election is check to make sure you are registered where you think you are registered. Because for some reason, in the good old USA, we can purge voters every so often. And so it's happened to people where they're purged from the system and they show up on election day and they can't vote, okay? So make sure you're actually registered to vote with your correct address, all your information. So when you go to the voting place on voting day, on election day, voting day, you can actually cast your ballot and it'll count and it'll be great. So those are kind of the two big things. The registration deadline is something that will be dependent on where you live. I keep saying it, it really does matter. So for example, Arkansas, you have to register to vote 30 days before the election date. Cali is 15 days before the election date. DC, you can pretty much register to vote through election day at the site. You can show up on election day to whatever polling place is assigned to you, register to vote, and cast your ballot all on the same day, okay? And then North Dakota, there's no requirement to register to vote. So all of this is very state dependent. You will see that theme throughout this video, that you have to check where you live for the requirements on registering to vote and casting your ballot to vote. So the next big topic to discuss is actually voting, okay? And I messed up in 2016, and I was in school, which is out of state to where my actual state is. So I was voting absentee, and I filled out the application to vote absentee and not the ballot to vote. In hindsight, I should have known since I didn't pick a candidate, but in my head, I was like, oh, I just have to fill this thing out and I'll send it in and it'll be done. And then the ballot came after the election. So that was embarrassing. And so I want that not to happen to you guys, which is why I'm making this video. So there are three ways essentially you can vote: early voting, absentee voting, and then voting on election day. And we'll get into mail-in voting as well, since that's a big topic here in 2020 based on everything that's going on right now. A lot of states are allowing the pandemic to be used as a reason to mail-in vote. So we'll start with early voting. Early voting is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to vote early. I personally thought early voting and absentee voting were the same thing because I thought you were just submitting your vote early, like through the mail. That's not the case. Some states allow you to go to polling places ahead of the election and cast your vote in person, okay? This is dependent on state for timeline, location, number of hours that the polling place will be open is also state dependent. So check with your state to 1, see if you have early voting eligible to you, and then 2, what is that time frame for early voting? Some states it's up until the election day, some states it's the Friday before, the Sunday before, 10 days before. It really matters what state you're in, but you have the ability to go to a polling place not on election day and vote. This is really nice if your election day is packed, if you're a working professional and it might be easier to get in and out of a polling site on an earlier day rather than trying to fight the lines of the general election. And again, it is state dependent. So make sure your state has it and then look at the requirements for what it is to vote early. Absentee ballots. So absentee voting is essentially for people that are not able to vote on election day. So you either have pre-existing disease that doesn't let you leave your house, you might be out of town, you might be overseas that time of election day. So you can apply for an absentee ballot and submit that through the mail. And so this is important. There are 2 steps to a voting absentee. You are going to take an application, fill it out, and submit it. And then they were going to mail you your ballot to actually cast your ballot. You will fill that out and you will submit that. And that will be your vote for the upcoming election. 2 separate things. 2 separate things. They both matter and they're both super important. The dates and requirements to get all of these done are state dependent. And I'm going to insert a picture right here of essentially all the states and their requirements right now for 2020. Because what's important this year is that some states are allowing you to use the pandemic as a reasonable excuse to request an absentee ballot. And some states are not. They do not care that we are in a pandemic. They do not care that we should be social distancing and in our house most of the time. So you got to either go vote early or vote on election day, but you're not getting an absentee ballot. But also Google your state's requirements. Very state dependent. The last way you can vote is in person. I'm gonna be real with you. Before I was actually able to vote, I thought everyone showed up on election day and you cast your ballot like that. I didn't realize that there were other ways to vote. I don't know why voting is so complicated, but it is. So the last way you can vote is on election day in person at your polling site. And I say at your polling site because this is also very important. You are assigned a polling site based on where you live in your city, county, etc. And that polling site is where you go to vote. It'll give you an address, name of the building, etc. A lot of times it's like schools or like senior citizen like activity centers, things like that. And that's why a lot of schools don't have school on election day, is they're used as polling sites. And that was always so nice when you were a child. Too bad it doesn't matter as an adult because now I'm expected to go to work and vote that day. Unless you early vote or absentee vote, you got options. Also, something to note is that on your election day, you'll sign up at your polling place, and 2/3 of states require you to have some form of identification with you during that day. Now, requirements for that identification are going to vary by state, okay? So I'll put a picture up of kind of the requirements by state in very general categories, but you should also Google this to see what your state expects you to bring with you on election day. So with all that being said, we're gonna just summarize it real quick. So voting can be split up into 2 things, registering to vote and actually voting. In order to register to vote, you either have to do it by mail or you have to do it online, okay? All dependent by state. You also should check to make sure you are appropriately registered to the residence that you're currently at. It also has state requirements attached to it. When it comes to actually voting, you can either vote early, you can vote absentee, or you can vote in person. Early, you go to a polling site for the election. The deadline, times, location are all state dependent. Make sure you look that up. Absentee voting and what people are calling mail-in voting in 2020 are the same thing. You need an application, and then you are also going to submit your ballot all through the mail. The third thing is voting in person on election day. You will go to your assigned polling place with the required identification by your state, also state dependent, and you will vote and cast your ballot in person on election day, November 3rd. I believe it is this year. And that's it. I don't know why voting is confusing, and I was confused on why it's so confusing, but I wanted to kind of break down a lot of the terms and definitions and make it a little bit less scary and a little bit more palatable of a voting experience, so it's a little bit easier to do it, as this election is very important for a lot of reasons, which I won't get into in this video, but make sure you vote, okay? And that's kind of it. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope this was helpful, and I really need 2020 to wrap it up.